The white dress was a mistake. Pamela knew at the moment she stepped out of the cab and saw 300 Koreans dressed in varying shades of actually white, crisp, clean, coordinated white. While she stood there in a cream-colored wrap dress she had convinced herself was basically the same thing. It was not the same thing. "Okay," she whispered to herself, smoothing down the fabric and squaring her shoulders. "We don't spiral. We walk in like we own the building." She walked in like she owned the building. The party was everything Seoul knew how to be. Excessive, gorgeous, and completely unbothered by the concept of a budget. White balloons kissed the ceiling of a rooftop venue that overlooked the Nin River. Fairy lights draped across every surface like someone had caught moonlight and pinned it in place. And the music was the kind that vibrated in your chest and made your body move before your brain agreed to it. Waiters weaved through the crowd holding trays of drinks that glowed faintly blue, and Pamela grabbed one immediately because she was a woman of priorities. She was a Kenyan-American nurse working in Seoul on a 2-year contract, and she had decided, with great intention, that her social life would not suffer for it. Back home, her mother called her a life liver. Her co-workers called her that loud one. Her patients called her the nice one with the big laugh. All of these were accurate. She was 28, single by choice and occasionally by circumstance, and she had worn the wrong shade of white to a party in a foreign country, and she did not care even a little bit. At least, that's what she told herself. By the second drink, she actually meant it. She'd found a corner of the rooftop near the railing where the view of the river was uninterrupted and the breeze was doing beautiful things to her hair. She was mid-video, recording herself doing a little shoulder shimmy for her Instagram story with the caption, "Thriving in Seoul." Accepting no bad vibes, when her friend Amara appeared from the crowd looking frantic. "Pam, come dance, they're playing Afrobeats." "They're playing Afrobeats in Seoul? I don't ask questions, I just move my body. Come." She followed because Amara was a force of nature and also because Afrobeats in Seoul was genuinely a cultural event she needed to witness. The dance floor was a collision of cultures. Koreans who had clearly been practicing, expats who needed no practice, and a handful of people who were simply vibing in their own dimension. Pamela slid right in. She danced with abandon. Big movements, full commitment, the kind of dancing that comes from a person who has long since stopped worrying about who's watching. She laughed when Amara tried to move and stumbled. She laughed when a random man attempted to match her energy and gave up after 30 seconds. She was, by every measure, having the time of her life. And then she stepped back. She didn't see him. That was the thing. She genuinely did not see him. One moment she was mid-spin, feeling herself completely, and the next her stiletto heel came down with precise and terrible accuracy directly onto someone's foot. The sound the man made was not loud. That was almost worse. It was quiet, a sharp, controlled exhale, the kind of sound a person makes when they have been trained to absorb pain without showing it. Pamela spun around. The apology was already forming on her lips, the automatic, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," that had been bred into her through years of nursing school and a Nigerian aunt who believed rudeness was a spiritual affliction. But the words slowed down somewhere between her brain and her mouth, because the man she had stepped on was, well, he was that. Tall for a Korean man, which she noticed first. Then the jaw sharp enough to cause injury, completely unfair in its construction. His hair was dark and pushed back slightly, not styled aggressively, just settled, like it knew exactly where it was supposed to be. He wore all white, actual white, not cream, not off-white white. A slim-fitted suit with no tie and the top 2 buttons of his shirt open, and he wore it the way some men wear expensive things, like he'd forgotten he had it on. He was surrounded by 4 men. She registered this only peripherally. The 4 men were large and wore earpieces and had the particular stillness of people who were always watching doorways. She did not process what this meant. Not yet. What she processed was that she had stabbed this beautiful man's foot with a heel, and he was looking at her with an expression that was completely, almost unnervingly calm. Oh no, I am so sorry," she said, the words finally arriving. "I didn't see you, I was spinning and Are you okay? Which toe? Can you wiggle it?" The corner of his mouth moved. "Just barely." "I can wiggle it." "Show me." The 4 large men exchanged glances. The beautiful man blinked slowly. Excuse me? Your toe. Wiggle it so I know it's not broken. I'm a nurse. This is literally my job. I need visual confirmation. Something shifted in his face. She couldn't name it. It wasn't offense. It wasn't amusement exactly. It was more like the expression of a man encountering a weather event he hadn't forecast. It's not broken, he said. You don't know that. I have a high pain tolerance. That's not how bones work. She straightened up because she had started this argument and she was going to see it through. I'm sorry for stepping on you. I genuinely am. But toe fractures are underestimated all the time, and I would feel terrible if you were walking around on a broken. I'm fine. And then, so quietly she almost missed it. Thank you for the concern. His voice was low, measured, like each word had been selected carefully and placed down with intention. Pamela opened her mouth, closed it, felt the heat crawl up the back of her neck. That happened when she realized she had, perhaps, been slightly overwhelming. She did this sometimes. She knew she did this. Her mother called it the Pamela effect. Right? She said. Okay, good. Sorry again. She turned to walk away and then turned back, because her mouth had a will of its own. For what it's worth, these floors are slippery, and whoever planned this party should have considered the liability of Pamela. Amara appeared at her elbow like a guardian angel sent specifically to prevent her from finishing that sentence. Let's get drinks. I was just drinks. Now, move your feet. She let herself be pulled away. She did not look back. She was a professional and an adult, and she was absolutely not going to look back. She looked back. He was still watching her. Not with the irritation she expected. Not with the confusion she deserved. Just watching. Calm and direct and unreadable, with that barely there movement at the corner of his mouth that might have been the beginning of a smile. She faced forward. Amara, she said. I just stepped on a man's foot and then lectured him about bone density. Oh, I know. I watched the whole thing. Why didn't you stop me earlier? Because I wanted to see how far you'd take it. Amara handed her a fresh drink. Also, he was very handsome, and I wanted to see if you noticed. I noticed, Pamela said with great dignity. I am a nurse, not blind. She left the party an hour later. She had a 6 a.m. shift, a ward full of patients, and absolutely no business staying out past midnight regardless of how good the music was. She took a cab home, scrubbed off her makeup, braided her hair loosely, and lay in bed telling herself the encounter was forgettable. Entirely forgettable. She forgot about it almost immediately. His name she did not know. His face she did not forget. The next morning, the hospital smelled like it always did. Antiseptic and industrial cleaner with the faint ghost of the cafeteria's morning rice soup. Pamela moved through it, like she'd been born inside these walls. White sneakers squeaking on the polished floor, badge clipped to her chest, coffee in a thermos because the hospital coffee was a human rights issue she hadn't found the energy to report yet. Hanul Private Hospital was one of Seoul's most prestigious. A 16-floor building of glass and restrained architecture. The kind of place that had a piano in the lobby. Nobody ever played an artwork in the hallways that cost more than Pamela's annual salary. She worked the 4th floor general ward. Her patients ranged from post-surgical recovery to chronic condition management, and she knew all of their names, their food preferences, which ones pretended to take their medication and didn't, and which ones just wanted someone to talk to in the 15 minutes between rounds. She was that kind of nurse. The kind who remembered. The kind who stayed 3 minutes past when she needed to finish a conversation properly. Her coworker, on the other hand, was a different kind of nurse entirely. Seo Yun. Seo Yun was, and Pamela tried very hard to be fair in her assessments of people, a specific category of beautiful that she had weaponized completely. Tall, sharp-featured, with the kind of bone structure that belonged on a skincare advertisement. She moved through the ward with the energy of someone who had decided that competence was optional as long as aesthetics were maintained. She was not cruel, exactly. She was the particular kind of unkind that operates through omission. The way she'd breeze past a patient call button if she was busy with something more important. The way she'd forget to note a temperature spike if she didn't find the patient interesting enough. She also, in ways both subtle and breathtaking in their obviousness, did not like Pamela. "You're wearing your hair like that today?" was her greeting this morning, delivered while staring at Pamela's braids with the expression of a woman who considered herself extremely open-minded. "I'm wearing my hair on my head, yes?" Pamela replied, checking her patient roster. Seo Yun picked up a chart. "The woman in 412 was asking for you again. The new admission. She's very particular. I don't know why she won't just let whoever's assigned take care of her." "Maybe she likes my braids," Pamela said. She'd met the woman in 412 2 days ago, the morning of her admission. Kim Jia, 24, recovering from an appendectomy with mild post-surgical complications, and deeply, loudly unhappy about it. She'd woken up from the anesthesia disoriented and afraid, and Pamela had been the one who sat with her and explained slowly, clearly, gently, exactly what had happened and what would happen next. Jia had grabbed her hand and not let go for 20 minutes. After that, she'd requested Pamela for everything. Temperature checks, meal times, the moments in the evening when the ward got quiet and the homesickness of being in a hospital set in. She was funny once she settled, dry-wit wrapped in a formal exterior, the kind of person who said devastating things in a completely flat voice and then watched you figure out she was joking. Pamela had grown fond of her quickly. This happens sometimes. Some patients just land differently. She was in the middle of Jia's morning check. Blood pressure normal, appetite returning, complaints about the hospital gown loud and detailed, when she heard it. The shift in the ward. It wasn't a sound exactly. It was a change in pressure, the way a room feels different when certain people enter it. She registered it peripherally, the way the nurses at the station sat up slightly, the way a hush moved through the space like a wave. She finished noting Jia's stats and turned to ask her about breakfast. And there, in the doorway of room 412, stood the man from the party. Pamela's body did several things simultaneously. Her professional face arrived immediately. Blank, warm, neutral. The face she'd spent years constructing for situations that required her to have no visible inner life. Her hands continued what they were doing. Her eyes did a single, rapid sweep. White shirt, no jacket today, dark trousers. Those same 4 large men visible through the glass wall of the corridor. All of them waiting outside. His eyes found her immediately. She looked back at her clipboard. "He is a visitor. You are a nurse. This is a hospital. You have never seen this man in your life." "Uni." Jia sat up so fast Pamela almost reached out to stop her. "You came." "Yeah, you're supposed to be resting." His voice was the same, low, measured, but something in it softened in a way that was almost startling. He crossed to the bed and looked at his sister the way people look at things they'd be devastated to lose. "How are you feeling?" "Better. Much better because of Nurse Pamela." Jia grabbed Pamela's arm before she could take a professional step backward. "This is her. She's the one I told you about. She's been taking care of me. She stays extra and she explains everything and she actually listens. Uni, she's the best." "We've met," he said. Pamela looked up. He was looking at her with the same calm, unreadable expression from the party, except up close in fluorescent hospital lighting, with no music and no crowd. It was significantly more affecting. "Have we?" she said. The words came out completely smooth. She was impressed by herself. Something moved across his face. Not quite amusement, but adjacent to it. "The party. Last Friday. You stepped on my foot and then asked me to wiggle my toe." Jia's head swiveled between them with the speed and focus of a woman who had just scented drama. "I speak to many people at parties," Pamela said pleasantly. "It's hard to keep track. My foot remembers you. Is it healing well?" "Perfectly. Good." She made a final note on the chart and clicked her pen. "Your sister is progressing well. Appetite is improving, vitals are stable. She should be ready for discharge evaluation in 2 to 3 days depending on her bloods." "Thank you," he said, not the routine thank you of a visitor to a nurse. The specific, deliberate kind. "Just doing my job." She smiled at Jia. "I'll come back for your lunch check. Eat the rice this time, not just the broth." "It tastes like regret," Jia said. "All recovery food does. Eat it anyway." She walked out of the room with steady, unhurried steps. She made it to the supply closet at the end of the corridor, closed the door, pressed her back against it, and stood in the dark for 11 seconds. Korean man from the party. Visiting patient in 412. Normal. Fine. This is fine. She straightened up, opened the door, and walked back to the nurse's station, where Oh Seo-yun was staring at the door of room 412 with an expression that Pamela could only describe as volcanic. You know him? Seo-yun's voice was very carefully controlled. The visitor? He's the patient's brother. Yes, I know he's her brother. A pause. How do you know him? It's in the notes. Next of kin. Seo-yun turned to look at her, and Pamela recognized the look because she'd seen variations of it her whole life. The specific recalibration that happens when someone decides you have something they want and begins quietly to regard you as a problem. He's very important, Seo-yun said. The way people say things they want to sound like casual information but are actually warnings. Very well connected. You should be careful about being too familiar with visitors. Pamela looked at her for exactly 2 seconds. Thanks for the tip, she said, and went back to work. She didn't know his name yet. She found out 12 minutes later when her supervisor, head of nursing Kim Jong-hee, appeared at the station with an expression that suggested the building might be on fire or worse. The patient in 412, she said quietly, pulling Pamela slightly aside. Her brother just stopped at the desk. He specifically requested that you remain her primary nurse for the rest of her stay. A pause. He also introduced himself in case you weren't aware. Pamela waited. His name is Kang Jisoo. Another pause, longer this time, loaded with something Pamela couldn't yet name. He owns this hospital. The supply closet beckoned again. Pamela smiled professionally. Good to know, she said. She lasted 4 more hours before she texted Amara. The man from the party is my boss's boss's boss, and I told him I didn't remember him. Amara's response came in seconds. Pamela Adiz Okonkwo. Why are you like this? The thing about working in a hospital owned by a man you'd lied to was that it made you very efficient. Pamela had never moved so purposefully through her shifts. She documented everything with the precision of a woman preparing legal defense. She arrived 5 minutes early, left exactly on time, communicated with room 412 at the cadence of the perfectly professional, present, warm, competent, and offering absolutely zero openings for conversation that was not directly related to blood pressure readings or dietary fiber. It worked beautifully for exactly 3 days. On the 4th day, Kang Jisoo arrived at the hospital at 2 p.m., which was not visiting hours, walked past the front desk without stopping because apparently rules were for people who didn't own the building, and appeared on the 4th floor with the quiet inevitability of weather. Pamela was at the nurse's station updating charts. She clocked him in her peripheral vision, kept her eyes on the screen, and prepared to be completely invisible. Nurse Pamela. She looked up with the expression of a woman hearing her name for the first time. Mr. Kong. Visiting hours are. I know. He stopped at the station counter. His 4 men halted precisely 4 steps behind him, their default formation. I have a meeting in this building in 20 minutes. I came early. The boardroom is on the 14th floor. I'm aware. He looked at her steadily. Jia said you've been reading to her. Pamela blinked. She was bored. I had a break. It's not. She said you read her an entire chapter of whatever novel she had on her phone because the screen was hurting her eyes. It was a slow afternoon. She said you did different voices for the characters. A pause. The text called for it. That thing happened at the corner of his mouth again. She was beginning to understand it was his version of a full laugh. She wants you at her discharge tomorrow. I'll be on shift. She wants you specifically present. Not just on the ward. I'll make sure to be there. He nodded. Then he did something she didn't expect. He stayed. Not intrusively, not in the way that demanded attention. He simply stood at the counter for a moment longer and said, "You're good at your job." It landed differently than compliments usually did. Maybe because it wasn't decorated. No, for someone who, attached to it, no surprise embedded in it. Just a statement, clean and direct, the same way he seemed to do most things. I know, she said, the corner of his mouth. I'll see you at the discharge tomorrow. He walked away. Pamela watched him go and told herself she was monitoring visitor traffic patterns. Oh Seo-yun had been watching from the medication prep room. Pamela knew because she emerged 11 seconds after Jisoo disappeared around the corner, with a smile that was assembled rather than felt. "He talks to you a lot," she said. "He's checking on his sister. He didn't go to her room just now. He's going to a meeting on the 14th floor. Seo-yun's voice stayed pleasant. It was the pleasantness of a knife being cleaned before use. "My cousin works in admin. She says Kang Jisoo has never personally visited this hospital before. He usually sends people." Pamela sorted medication cups with great focus. "Interesting. You should be careful." Seo-yun picked up a chart she didn't need. "Men like that don't get interested without wanting something. And girls like you—" She stopped, edited whatever she was going to say, and replaced it with, "People in your position should be careful about misreading attention. Girls like you." There it was, gift wrapped in concern, delivered with a smile. Pamela set down the medication cup she was holding, turned, looked at Seo-yun with the specific patience she reserved for situations she was going to remember later. "Thank you, Seo-yun," she said warmly. "That's such a thoughtful thing to say." And she walked away, because there were about 47 things she could have said, and she was at work and she had a high professional standard to maintain. She texted Amara about it that evening. Amara responded, "Girls like you? Oh, she's done, I feel it in my bones." Pamela, "Be calm, she's harmless." Amara, "They're always harmless until they're not. What did the handsome mafia man do today?" Pamela, "He's not a mafia." Amara, "Why do you know that with such certainty?" Pamela stared at her phone. She thought about the 4 men with earpieces, the way the front desk staff had practically vibrated when he walked in, the way her supervisor had said he owns this hospital in the tone of someone saying the sky has decided to arrest you. She thought about the way he'd said you're good at your job like it was a fact he'd independently verified. Pamela, "Go to sleep." Jia's discharge was a production. Not because of the paperwork. Pamela had organized that meticulously, but because Jia was, it turned out, the kind of person who treated every exit as a red carpet moment. She had changed out of the hated hospital gown into a pale blue outfit someone had brought her. Her hair was done, and she had apparently gotten her nails touched up at some point during her recovery, which Pamela chose not to ask about. "You have to give me your number," Jia said, while Pamela went through the discharge checklist. "We're friends now. This is non-negotiable. I'm your nurse. You were my nurse. Now I'm leaving. What's the rule after discharge?" "There's not really a—" "Give me your number, Pamela. I have things to tell you and limited time to tell them." She held out her phone with the confidence of someone who had never been told no by anyone who counted. Pamela looked at the phone, looked at Jia. "What kind of things?" "Important things. Cultural exchange. Girl talk. Also, I know very good restaurants, and you look like a woman who deserves good food." This was accurate. Pamela took the phone and typed in her number. "Thank you," Jia said, accepting it back with quiet triumph. "Also, my brother is going to be here in—" She checked the time. "For minutes. He's never late. I'm aware of your brother's schedule. He's your emergency contact." Jia tilted her head. "He asked about you." Pamela continued checking boxes. "He's asked about your care plan, yes? I've gone over it with him." "Not about my care plan." Jia watched her with the eyes of someone who had grown up reading people. "He asked about you. What you were like. If I thought you were happy here in Seoul." The clipboard was very interesting. Very detailed. Pamela looked at it very carefully. "What did you tell him?" she asked, casual and professional, a woman completely unbothered. "I said you seemed like someone who was happy everywhere." Jia smiled. "And that you did very good character voices." The elevator opened at the end of the corridor. Kang Jisoo stepped out in a charcoal coat, phone in hand, unhurried, and the ward did its thing again. That collective held breath, that slight reorganization of the room's atmosphere around his presence. He looked up and found Pamela immediately, not like he searched, like he already knew where she was. "Ready?" he said to Jia. Nurse Pamela was just finishing my discharge. He stopped beside his sister, glanced at the checklist, then at Pamela. Is there anything she needs to know? Anything to watch for? It's all in the discharge summary. Light activity for 2 weeks. The follow-up appointment is booked. She handed Jia the folder. And no lifting anything heavier than a bag of groceries. She ignores instructions, he said. I do not, said Jia. You went hiking 3 days after your wisdom teeth removal. That was a light hike. You called me from a mountain. Pamela laughed before she could stop it. Not a polite laugh. An actual one. The big kind that had punctuated her whole life. It came out full and warm and slightly embarrassing. And she pressed her lips together too late to catch it. Jisoo looked at her. Not like she'd done something wrong. Like she'd done something interesting. I'll walk you to the lobby, Pamela said, pivoting to professionalism. You don't have to, Jisoo started. Hospital policy. Discharge escort to the exit. This was not strictly mandatory. She was making decisions in real time. The elevator down was quiet in the way that small spaces with too much awareness are quiet. Jia, sensing the energy with the accuracy of someone who had definitely been scheming from a hospital bed, pulled out her phone and became very interested in a text message, which meant it was Pamela and Jisoo and approximately 4 feet of air that felt charged. You're staying in Seoul? He said. Contract ends in 8 months. And after? I don't know yet. She watched the floor numbers decrease. Why? Jia will be disappointed. Jia will be fine. She doesn't make friends easily. He said it plainly, no manipulation in it. She's particular. Difficult, some people find her. I found her funny. Most people don't stay long enough to find out. She looked at him then, because that felt like something that deserved being looked at directly. He was already looking at her. He did that. Looked at her like he'd decided she was worth looking at and had made peace with the decision. The elevator opened. Seo-yun was standing in the lobby. This was not, at first, remarkable. Seo-yun's shift overlapped with the lobby level sometimes. What was remarkable was the expression she had when the elevator doors opened and she saw the 3 of them step out together. Pamela mid-laugh at something Jia had said. Jisoo close enough that their shoulders were nearly aligned. Seo-yun's face did something complicated and immediately controlled. She smiled and stepped forward. Mr. Kong, she said, warm and precise, her Korean shifting to a register Pamela recognized as formal but feminine. I'm Seo-yun, 4th floor senior nurse. I've also been part of your sister's care team. Jisoo looked at her with polite, blank acknowledgement. Thank you. If there's anything you need, any questions about the hospital, the facilities. Nurse Pamela has been very thorough, he said. He didn't say it unkindly. He didn't say it with any particular emphasis. He said it like a fact being placed in the record, and then he turned back toward the exit. Seo-yun's smile stayed exactly in place. But her eyes cut to Pamela with the precision of something that had just upgraded from inconvenience to target. 3 days later, Pamela arrived at work to find her patient allocation had been reshuffled. All of her long-term patients, the ones she'd built routines with, had been reassigned to other nurses. She'd been put on the acute bay, the most demanding rotation, with no explanation noted. She went to her supervisor. Kim Jong-hee looked uncomfortable. There's been a complaint, she said, not meeting Pamela's eyes. About professional boundaries. From who? A pause. It's anonymous. A complaint about professional boundaries from an anonymous source resulted in a schedule reshuffling? It's policy to. What are the specific allegations? Jong-hee looked at her desk. That you've been overly familiar with a particular visitor. That it's been noted by multiple staff. Pamela counted to 4 internally. I have been professional in every interaction with every visitor on this ward. My documentation is complete and accurate, and I will stand behind every note I've made. I know you have. Jong-hee looked genuinely uncomfortable. I'll look into it. Please do. She walked out of the office and went directly to the bathroom, where she gripped the edge of the sink and breathed. She was not going to become someone who let this shake her. She had been a black woman in predominantly non-black spaces her entire professional career. She knew what it meant when the rules shifted around her without explanation. She knew what it looked like when someone found a system to pull on. She was not going to shake. But she was furious, and the fury was clean and clarifying, and she was going to do her job today with a level of excellence so severe it became its own kind of statement. She went to the acute bay. She did not, however, know that Jia had texted her brother a screenshot of a comment she'd seen. One of the hospital's internal feedback forms, accessible to senior staff, that Seo Yun had filled out in terms just vague enough to seem credible and specific enough to cause damage. Pamela didn't know that. She found out what happened because of it later. Started with a phone call Pamela didn't make. She was 3 hours into her acute bay shift, exhausted, efficient, and running on sheer principle, when her supervisor appeared at the bay entrance with an expression Pamela had never seen on her before. Not discomfort this time, something else. The specific look of a person reassessing multiple things simultaneously. "Pamela, can you come with me? I have a patient. Nurse Bay will cover. Please." She followed Kim Jong-hee to the 4th floor, then to the elevator, then up and up to the 14th floor where Pamela had never been. The doors opened onto a corridor that was immediately, obviously different from the rest of the hospital. Less clinical, more deliberate. The carpeting absorbed sound. The artwork was real. "Where are we going?" Pamela asked. "There's been a development," Jong-hee said, which was not an answer. The development, as it turned out, was a boardroom. The boardroom contained Kang Jisoo, seated at the head of a table that could fit 20 people. 2 individuals in suits with tablets who appeared to be lawyers or very well-organized assistants. And Oh Seo Yun, standing near the window with the posture of someone trying not to look like they knew why they'd been called here. Pamela walked in and took in the room in one sweep. Seo Yun's eyes found her immediately. Something flickered there. Surprise, recalculation. Jisoo stood when she entered. She didn't know why that registered so sharply. He stood like it was automatic, the way people stand for things that matter. "Sit down, please," he said. To Pamela, gently. To Seo Yun, with the politeness of a person who had already made a decision. Pamela sat. Jong-hee took the seat beside her and placed a tablet on the table. On the screen was the internal feedback form, the complaint about professional boundaries, and beside it a time-stamped access log. The feedback system, one of the suited individuals said, maintains an access record for compliance purposes. Every submission is logged by staff ID. He slid the tablet toward the center of the table. The complaint filed 3 days ago was submitted from Nurse Oh Seo Yun's staff account. The room was very quiet. Seo Yun's face had gone through several configurations and settled on something that was trying to be calm. "I submitted feedback as I'm entitled to. There were genuine concerns about..." The specific language used, the suited individual continued, mirrors almost exactly a message sent from a personal device to a third party the previous evening. "We have the metadata. That's... You can't access personal. We didn't access your personal device." A pause. "We accessed the hospital's internal Wi-Fi records, which staff consent to monitoring upon signing their employment contract." He slid a second document forward. Page 12, paragraph 4. Seo Yun looked at the document. The configuration of her face completed its final change. She looked at Pamela with an expression that had given up on composed and arrived somewhere rawer. "She was getting in the way," she said, not loudly, almost to herself. "He's never even been here before. He's never shown up personally, and he walks in and he doesn't even see anyone, and then she stopped. Started again. "I've worked here for 4 years. "I know," Jisoo said. "I've worked here for 4 years, and I'm good at my job, and I know you're good at your job," he said, and he meant it, which somehow made it worse. "Which is why this is disappointing." The HR process was brief and without drama. Seo Yun was escorted out by one of the suited individuals. She didn't make a scene. In a way, that was the most surprising part. Pamela sat very still for a moment after she left. Then she looked at Jisoo. He was already looking at her. "I'm sorry," he said. "It shouldn't have gotten to the schedule change before this was caught." "How did you find out?" Gia. The corner of his mouth. She has opinions about things that affect people she considers friends. She sent me a screenshot. She sent you a screenshot. With 4 paragraphs of commentary. Pamela pressed her lips together against a smile. She's very thorough. It's a family trait. He held her gaze. Your schedule will be restored, and there will be a formal apology from the hospital. I don't need a formal apology. You'll have one anyway. She looked at him. Actually looked at him the way she'd been carefully not doing for 2 weeks because it felt like looking at something that required decisions she hadn't made yet. He was sitting at the head of a table in a hospital he owned, having just handled the whole situation with the efficiency and quietness of someone who did difficult things easily, and he looked tired. Not dramatically, just slightly, like he was carrying a weight he'd distributed evenly enough that most people didn't notice it. She noticed things. It was the nurse in her. Why didn't you just send someone? She asked. To handle what? This. Any of it. Gia said you usually send people. He was quiet for a moment. I wanted to come. Pamela's heart did something that she was going to address later, privately, in the supply closet. Thank you, she said, for taking it seriously. It was serious, simple, direct, like all of it. She stood up, smoothed her scrubs, picked up her badge that had been fidgeting in her hands without her noticing. I should get back to my patients. My actual patients, now that I have them again. Pamela. She stopped. He stood. There it was again, automatic, and for a moment he didn't say anything, just looked at her in that way he had, like she was a problem he was happy to have. Gia is having dinner on Saturday. At my home. A pause. She told me to ask if you were free. She told you to ask. Those were her words. And your words. Another pause. Longer. I'd like you to come. Pamela stood in a 14th floor boardroom in a hospital in Seoul, in her scrubs with her badge in her hand, looking at a man who owned the building, who stood up when she entered rooms, who had 4 men with earpieces and a heart that softened entirely around his sister, who had looked at her outside a party with barely their amusement after she'd stabbed his foot and asked him to wiggle his toe. I'll check my schedule, she said. Of course. Something in his expression settled. Comfortable, certain. Like he already knew what she'd find. She walked to the elevator, pressed the button, waited. It was the foot, wasn't it? He said from behind her. She turned her head slightly. Excuse me? You remembered me from the party. That first day in the hospital. His voice was warm with it now, the full warmth he kept rationed. You remembered and you pretended you didn't. The elevator opened. Pamela stepped in and faced the closing doors. I speak to many people at parties, she said. It's very hard to keep track. The doors closed on the quiet sound of him laughing. A real one, she thought, not the barely there version. Full and low and real. She texted Amara from the elevator. Okay, so, Amara what? Pamela, he laughed. Amara? The Mafia laughed? Pamela. He's not a Mafia, Amara. Amara. Pamela, look me in the eye. Pamela. I can't, you're in a different city. Amara. Look me in the eye and tell me that man is not a Mafia. Pamela stared at her phone. Thought about the earpieces. The way rooms rearranged themselves. The 14th floor. The lawyers with tablets who appeared from nowhere with access logs. Pamela, he invited me to dinner. Amara. I'm booking a flight. Saturday came the way anticipated things do. Faster than expected. Slower in the final hours. Pamela spent 45 minutes on her outfit and settled on something that said I didn't try in a way that required considerable effort. Rust-colored dress, her hair out and full, the good earrings that her mother had sent from home. Gia opened the door before she could knock, which meant she'd been watching from somewhere, which was on brand. You look incredible, Gia said. You look recovered, Pamela said. I was going to hug you, but I know you'll lecture me about my stitches. I will absolutely lecture you about your stitches. Come in. Gia took her hand and pulled her inside, and the apartment was, well, it was exactly what she expected and nothing like what she expected simultaneously. Floor-to-ceiling windows over the city. Art that wasn't decorative so much as chosen. A kitchen that opened onto a living space where something already smelled like dinner. Quiet, tasteful, nothing that announced itself. And Jisoo, coming from the kitchen with a dish towel over his shoulder, which was information she was not prepared for. "You cook?" she said. "Jia can't lift anything," he said. "And I wasn't going to make you eat delivery on your first visit." First, she noted that word, filed it carefully. Dinner was good, genuinely, surprisingly good, the kind of meal that made you ask questions about how someone learned to cook like that, which opened conversations that led to other conversations, the kind that moved through hours without feeling like it. Jia was exactly as she'd been in the hospital. Funny and sharp and completely unsubtle in her agenda, repeatedly finding reasons to leave the table that fooled no one. At one point, she announced she needed to check something on her phone and was gone for 22 minutes. "She thinks she's subtle," Jisoo said. "She really doesn't," Pamela agreed. "She just thinks we think she thinks she is." He smiled, a full one, unhidden. She'd been collecting these without meaning to. "You said your contract ends in 8 months, he said. What would it take to extend it?" She looked at him across the table. He looked back without flinching, which she was beginning to understand was just how he was. No games in the delivery, just the thing itself placed in front of her plainly. "Depends," she said carefully, "on what's here. Seoul is a very good city." "It is. Hanul Hospital has an excellent nursing program. I've noticed." "And," he said quieter, "I've been told the chief medical officer is planning to create a new patient advocacy coordinator role for someone particular about patient experience." Pamela tilted her head. "Who told you that?" "Never mind." She stared at him. "Did you just—" "The role has been in consideration for some time," he said, unbothered. "You would have been a good candidate regardless of any of this." Kong Jisoo. "Nurse Pamela. Are you trying to create a whole job too?" "The job is real. The timing is coincidental." A pause that was not entirely believable. "Mostly." She laughed, the big one, the full one, and it rang out in the apartment, and she didn't try to catch it this time. Jia reappeared from wherever she'd been hiding. "What did I miss? Why is she laughing?" "Appa, what did you say?" "Nothing," he said. "He offered me a job," Pamela said. Jia pointed at her brother. "I told you to be smoother than that." "I was smooth." "You were not smooth. A job offer is not smooth." "I didn't only offer the job." "Then what did you do?" "Jia." She stopped. He looked at Pamela. "I'd like to take you somewhere on Sunday. Not work-related. Just somewhere. If you want." The apartment was warm. The city glittered below the windows. Jia was vibrating beside her with restrained energy. Pamela thought about a party she'd almost skipped. A white dress that was actually cream. A foot she'd stepped on and a toe she'd demanded be wiggled. She thought about the laugh she'd just heard for real, in full, and how it had been worth 8 months of watching the corner of his mouth for previews. "Where?" she asked. "Somewhere you haven't been. That's most of Seoul." "Good." He picked up his glass. "We have time." Amara arrived the following Friday. She did not book a flight as a joke. She said she needed to assess the situation personally, which meant she needed to see Kong Jisoo with her own eyes and form her own conclusions about the earpiece situation. Her conclusions, delivered to Pamela at 11 p.m. over takeout in Pamela's apartment, were as follows. "He's absolutely a mafia." "I know," Pamela said. "And you're going on a second date with him Sunday." "Yes." "And you're thinking about staying in Seoul." "Maybe." Amara put down her chopsticks, looked at her best friend. This woman she had known for 11 years, who laughed too loudly and cared too much and stepped on men's feet at parties and demanded visual confirmation of their toe mobility. "You're happy," Amara said. Pamela thought about it for a genuine moment. "I think I might be," she said. Amara picked her chopsticks back up. "Good. Also, Jia and I are going to brunch tomorrow. She invited me. We're friends now. You've been in Seoul for 6 hours. She texted me before I landed. I told you she was going to be trouble." Pamela laughed, the big one, and outside the window Seoul sparkled on.
Hello besties, in this story we learned that you don't have to shrink yourself to be accepted in spaces that weren't built for you. Show up fully, laugh loudly, take up room, and the right people won't just tolerate it, they'll stay for it. And kindness is never wasted. Pamela didn't take care of Gia to impress anyone, she did it because that's who she was. Everything else that followed was just the universe taking notes. Thank you so much for watching. Kindly like, subscribe and share.